Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be taking a close look at a critical yet kind of invisible piece of infrastructure that literally keeps our daily commutes running, our supply chains moving, and our economy humming. It's a vast network buried right beneath our feet, and right now, well, it's facing a modern hidden threat.
Picture your normal routine for a second. You pull up to the pump, you swipe your card, fill up, and drive away. It's totally mindless, right? But have you ever stopped and wondered how a gas station actually knows when it's out of fuel? Or, for that matter, how they make absolutely sure that the thousands of gallons of gasoline buried under the concrete aren't slowly leaking into the surrounding soil? I mean, it's not just some guy out there with a giant dipstick checking the tanks every morning. There's actually a highly sophisticated electronic brain handling all of this behind the scenes. And bridging the gap between that everyday chore and complex cybersecurity is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly is this hidden brain? It's called an automatic tank gauge, or an ATG for short. According to the EPA and cybersecurity researchers, an ATG is an electronic monitoring system used to measure fuel levels, detect leaks, and support inventory management in fuel storage systems. In practice, these ATGs are the primary tools that operators use to track tank conditions. They're absolutely crucial for environmental protection programs, making sure that hazardous substances stay exactly where they belong. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this infrastructure, take a look at this staggering number: 542,000. The EPA estimates there are roughly 542,000 underground storage tanks nationwide holding petroleum or other hazardous substances. Now, while not every single tank translates perfectly to a one-to-one ATG count, because, one facility might have multiple tanks hooked up to a single gauge, this figure really highlights the massive scale and urgency of this invisible network. Hundreds of thousands of these underground environments are out there across the United States alone.
Section 1. The gas station's hidden brain.
So you might assume that critical infrastructure on this massive scale is managed by some giant, centralized federal network, right? Actually, scratch that. It's not. ATGs are managed locally by station owners, convenience stores, and fuel distributors. Sure, the EPA and state regulators oversee the environmental compliance side of things, but they aren't operating the actual gauges. The devices themselves are in the hands of local business owners, service contractors, and third-party remote monitoring providers. This creates a highly decentralized environment. And from a cybersecurity perspective, defending a massive, decentralized network of locally managed tech is a real game changer, and honestly, an incredibly complex challenge.
Section 2. Unlocking the attack surface.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how shockingly simple these vulnerabilities actually are. We aren't talking about super sophisticated zero-day hacking techniques here. The clearest, most glaring vulnerability is the direct exposure of these ATGs to the public internet without proper authentication. The Dutch Institute for Vulnerability Disclosure found that a ton of systems could be accessed through serial interfaces that were just left open on TCP port 1001. If an attacker stumbles on that open port, they can view fuel levels, change tank labels, and even alter alarm thresholds. Throw in poor password practices and weak network segmentation, meaning the operational tech is mixed right in with a regular business network, and you literally have a recipe for disaster. And the cybersecurity community has been sounding the alarm loudly on this. Just listen to this 2024 report by the security firm BitSight. They stated, "Internet-exposed ATGs remain attractive targets for sabotage and cyber warfare." They found multiple critical vulnerabilities across 6 different ATG systems from 5 different vendors. So yeah, this isn't just a minor IT headache for a local gas station. This elevates the stakes to a high-level threat involving the potential for deliberate, coordinated sabotage of our critical infrastructure. Section 3. Real-world harm and disruption. So what does this all mean in the real world? Well, the consequences are severe, both physically and economically. Attackers can get in and change critical parameters, like the geometry and capacity of the tanks. They can generate false inventory readings, basically tricking a station into thinking they're totally full when they're running on empty, or vice versa. Even worse, they can completely disable safety and leak alarms. That risks devastating environmental damage and undetected fuel leaks. And economically, it's a nightmare. We've seen reports showing that compromised stations literally cannot pump gas until their systems are completely reset, which obviously halts daily commerce in its tracks. Let's break down the overall threat landscape. Who would actually want to hack a gas station? Well, you've got your cybercriminals, whose motive is usually extortion or just sheer vandalism. They're opportunistic, basically prowling around for whatever open TCP port 1001 they can find. Then you have nation-states, who view fuel distribution as soft, critical infrastructure. Their scope is widespread, looking to cause economic disruption or large-scale sabotage. And finally, hacktivists or malicious insiders might target specific stations based on ideology or retaliation. Because ATGs are so vital, they appeal to everyone, from a local vandal to state-aligned groups. The threat really comes from all directions. Section 4. The 2026 Cyber Campaign. And this brilliantly illustrates how rapidly a theoretical vulnerability can turn into a nationwide crisis. Check out this timeline. In April 2026, the Energy Marketers of America had to put out an urgent advisory about cyberattacks targeting ATGs in Tennessee. We're talking over 15 tanks hit at a single convenience store chain. Shortly after that, the Utah Department of Public Safety identified over 4,000 vulnerable systems across the U.S. Then, by May, CNN reported that U.S. officials believed suspected Iranian hackers had breached systems across multiple states. Now, as with all fast-moving cyber incidents, attribution can evolve, so we're treating this as a reported government assessment rather than a final judicial finding. But man, the rapid escalation of this threat is undeniable. During this 2026 campaign, the disruptions weren't just theories on a whiteboard. They were highly tangible. These attacks triggered false alarms that sent staff scrambling, deleted critical system data, and, exactly as we discussed earlier, physically halted gas pumps. These weren't just researchers finding open ports in a lab. These were confirmed real-world disruptions to everyday fuel operations across the country, directly impacting everyday consumers and local business owners. Section 5. Securing our fuel supply. So the crucial point is this. Protecting these systems is entirely achievable using standard, proven IT practices. Leading voices like the DIVD and Gauge manufacturer Veeder-Root have laid out the steps clearly. Step 1 is the absolute most important. Remove ATGs from the public internet immediately. They simply do not need to be publicly visible. Step 2, deploy properly configured firewalls and use VPN gateways for remote connectivity. And Step 3, segregate your ATGs entirely from your corporate and payment networks. That way, if someone breaches your main office network, they can't just casually stroll over to your fuel monitoring systems. But it goes beyond just the network architecture. It requires strict administrative discipline, too. Operators need to regularly audit their network configurations to make sure nothing was accidentally exposed during, say, a routine maintenance update. They absolutely must set passwords on those serial ports, promptly apply vendor security updates the minute they're released, and maintain documented incident response plans. Remember, a massive chunk of this risk stems from insecure deployments, not some unpatchable futuristic flaw. Sound architecture is just as important as software patches. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. We've uncovered the hidden brain of the gas station, the surprisingly simple vulnerabilities that leave it exposed, the escalating real-world campaigns of 2026, and the actionable steps needed to lock it all down. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Next time you pull up to a pump, swipe your card, and fill up your tank, take a look down at the concrete. Ask yourself, is the invisible infrastructure beneath you truly secure? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this fascinating topic and keep looking at the everyday world through a new, informed lens.